Hello out there. Welcome to part 3 of our epic saga in the for the restoration of this Teisco bass guitar. In this video, we are going to put the strings on this thing. I have some Rhoda sounds I'll put on here. These are, let's see. These are long scale standard gauge number 66 LD Rhoda sounds. I've already got a couple of these strings on, and I thought what I would like to do is just give a pointer to anyone who puts a lot of bass strings on. If you'll notice, on most bass guitars, you have what's called a split shaft on the. Let's get a little close up here. You have what's called a split shaft. Sorry for the shaky video. Right here. And so many times I get bass guitars where the strings have just been basically laid through the split shaft like this, and then wrapped around. That's incorrect. What these are really meant for, you're supposed to clip the excess off of your string. And what I usually do, let's see. Sorry about the shaky camera work here. What I usually do to measure this, feed through on the bridge, so get all that part ready. And for you guys who already know this, you can just fast forward or whatever, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to give a bit of a pointer to some beginners. What I usually do here to measure the excess before I clip it off, this is the string that I'm going for right here. So what I usually do on basses is I come to the next one past the one that I want. So this is the one that I want. This is the next one past it, and what I do is just go a little bit past that and clip right there. So that's going to leave me with some excess. See, so I've got enough extra here for this one to push it straight down in. If you actually look inside these split shaft tuners, there is a hole down inside there, and that's where the string is meant to go. You don't just lay the string in like that. You actually elevate it and push it down inside there, down in that hole. And then what you can do is bend it over from there, and then go ahead and wind it. But that's going to make sure that your tuning is stable and the string doesn't slip out the top inadvertently on you. So that's one quick tip for all you beginning bassists, and some of you older guys too may not do it that way, but that's the way it's supposed to be done. Well, the surprises just keep coming with this bass. It's like everything that could possibly be wrong with it kind of was wrong with it. You can see right here, this is the nut, and this nut actually is supposed to be a lot higher than that. I don't know what idiot owned this bass before me. If you're watching, I'm sorry, but you kind of didn't do this bass many favors. But look here, here's your 0 fret. These slots here are just meant to keep the string from going back and forth, but look at this string. Look, it just pops right out of there. So that means I'm either going to have to take this nut out and put a shim underneath it, and it'll have to be a fairly thick one to get it up high enough so that doesn't do that. Or I can just carve a brand new nut, and that's probably the approach I'll take. So let's carve a new nut for this thing. Again, kind of sucks because we were so close to having it ready to go, but if anything worth doing is worth doing right, so let's get a new nut for it. Okay, first things first, we need to just kind of assess how this is being held in here, and it looks to me like it's held in with some glue, probably super glue. The last thing I want to do is disrupt the finish here on the headstock that I've just completed. So what I want to do is actually just come back here to the back side and with a X-Acto knife and just score right down the edge of it. so that it doesn't chip off any of the finish on. Well, I said an X-Acto knife, but a box cutter will do as well. And essentially, all I'm doing is just breaking the seal of finish right up next to the nut, because we definitely do not want to have to fix a finish problem that we've created ourselves by not planning ahead. So we're just scoring right behind it and being very careful not to cut ourselves. And actually, you know, since I have my knife out, it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and score the front edge as well, because it looks like there's a little bit of excess glue here on top, so I may as well just score down there. Okay, we're just going to pop this nut right out of there, and to do that I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver just right up here against it. I think if I use it over here, there's already a chip out underneath, so I don't think there's a lot really to grab onto right there, and there's definitely not right there. So I'm going to come over here on the high E side and just use a little fret hammer and just give her a little tap, and there she goes. Simple as that. And most of them, if they're not overly glued, should come out that simply. And you'll notice here, not any damage to our finish. Good planning. Okay, I just tried to make a new nut for this thing, and got pretty far along, and the damn thing cracked off on me. So I'm gonna have to start all over. So what I'm gonna do this time, I'm gonna use a little harder material. I think this was some kind of, I don't know what this was, some kind of soapstone or something. I'm not sure. But it was pretty brittle, so I'm not going to use that again. I'm going to go for a trusty old bone. I know this is bone. I thought that was, but apparently it wasn't. This is for sure bone. This is a blank, and what we're going to do is we will start by using our old nut as a sort of guide. First thing I want to do is measure the width of the thing. So we'll get that and just mark it. Rather than sitting here with a ruler and doing all that mess, I find this to be a hell of a lot quicker. So now that we have that, we can put it in our vise and lop it off. There we go. Nice cut. Okay, again, just using our old one as a guide here, we're going to mark off the lowest depth all these slots, just right here on the front. And this pencil, it's not going to get quite down all the way to the bottom, because you know how pencils are. But it's going to give us sort of a guide about, you know, about where we need to think about being. So yeah, that's going to give us kind of a lowest depth right there. So the next thing we need to do is use our string spacer rule. You can get these also from Stuart McDonald. But you can see here, this is the bass side goes this way, and the treble side goes that way. This is our old one that we're kind of using as a guide. We're going to pick out the 4 string spaces we're going to use. And right here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 if we're skipping one. This one seems to be right about in the middle or so of our old slot. And the last one, the high string, the G, also seems to be about in the middle of our old slot. So I think these 4 are going to be just right for us. So we're going to pick those, and we're going to get our new one, our new blank in here. And we're going to mark these new spaces, and then get our slots cut out. Okay, we have our string spaces marked. Okay, here's a slotting tool we're going to use for our low E string. There's our size right there, 0.105 of an inch. And we're going to start here on the low E. And when you first start out, you want to make sure your slot is exactly over your mark. If it's just a little bit off, that can kind of throw you off on everything else. So you want to definitely make sure that these slots are on. And that also that you're going straight across. You don't want to be slanted really. Or actually, you know, I take that back. On 6 strings, if you have like a Gibson, you know, Gibsons actually, you do want them a little bit slanted outward on the ends, so that the strings actually run toward the posts. You don't want them straight on really, because straight on is not facing the posts on a Gibson. They do on like a PRS, because they are well designed, and on Fenders they're usually straight across. But on Gibsons, you kind of want it slotted outwards, just a little bit on the outside. With this one, we're just going to go straight across. Okay, we have a couple of these slots done now, and we're on to the third one. But I wanted to take an opportunity while doing the third one to show a little trick. A lot of times when you're doing these slots, your slotting tool can get bound up in there, and that's actually what happened when I was making this one. My slotting tool got bound up, and I ended up cracking off the end of that because it was binding. And what I had forgotten was a trick that I have used before, and that's to get a little bit of petroleum jelly, Vaseline, and put on your slotting tool. And this will also have the effect of, if you leave it on there, it'll also have the effect of protecting it from corrosion when it's in storage. But if you put a little bit of that on both sides, what that's going to do is keep it from binding up quite so much. So let's move on to this third slot. Let me tell you something, man. You want to mess with me? You want to mess with my guitars? I mess with you. I mess with your guitars. You want to say hello to my little friend? Hang on a second, let me get him. Yeah, probably the last thing you would want if you're making a nut from scratch, a bone nut, is for like the DEA or something to bust down your door at that moment, because it probably take you some explaining. Maybe even after you've been shot like 5 times or something, you'd have to explain yourself. But what I'm going to do now is we're going to, I mean, this is actually good enough to put on the guitar already, but I'm going to use some files. These are graduated files. They go from roughest to real fine, and I'm actually going to file these down to give this a nice polish and sheen. Okay, there's our finished part. Now let's get it on the guitar and finally get some strings on this thing. I'm dying to hear what it sounds like. Okay, here in the nut slot, there's actually some old glue that we're gonna have to get out of here. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in here. There's actually some that's kind of piled up right here, so I'm gonna just scrape that. Okay, here's our first test fitting of the new part, the new nut, and it looks like the only string I'm going to have trouble with is going to be this low E. I need to come in here and slot that down just a little bit more, but other than that, the rest of these look like they're going to be fitting fine. So let's slot that one down a little more, and then I think we'll be done. One more thing I like to do while I have the opportunity and have this guitar out like this and all the strings off is to take a sanding stick and just hit this 0 fret, because a lot of times these 0 frets can have little dimples and things in them. And sometimes it requires a crowning tool first, and then you can come back with this stick. But I think this one is probably going to be okay with just the stick since it's a base. Okay, we're ready to install the nut, and we're just going to use a little dab of Gorilla Super Glue. Okay, you'll probably recall before how we talked about stringing with these split shafts, and how we had to take the string down into the hole that's down in the split shaft. Well, with the low E string, oftentimes, unless you have just a really, really light set, with the low E, and you know, if you have a 5-string, definitely with the low B, it's very difficult to get that string down in between that split shaft, even if you're going through like this. So what you really want to do is come in here with some pliers, and these strings are wound, and what you want to do is grab the winding like so with some pliers and pull to unwind the outermost winding, and you want to just unwind it enough. You don't want to unwind it a lot, but you want to do it enough that you can get the string down into the hole and then bent up out of the hole. So a couple more turns there. I think that's probably going to be enough. So come in here with some clippers, clip off that excess bit of winding, and now you can see there we have a smaller diameter string. There's winding on that as well, and it's not going to break, but now it is small enough to fit down in the hole, and it will come and bend out of the hole, and we can wind it around the shaft now. All right, just for giggles, we're gonna check the DC resistance on these pickups, just to kind of see what they measure at. Right now I'm in the neck pickup. That one measures 6.7. Yes, about 6.7. The bridge measures 6.8 or thereabouts. So yeah, fairly hot pickups, but I think what really makes these sound so great is the magnets. The size of the magnets in them is just killer. Okay, the restoration of this bass is finally complete, and it's time for us to check it out. Let's see what all of our hard work hath wrought. Here are 2 thumb rests. You'll recall us making those from scratch. And again, they aren't perfect. They don't, and I wasn't intending for them to look perfect. I could have actually gone over them a few more times with the with different grades of sandpaper and got them extremely smooth, and then gone in there and finished them with a real thick coating of clear or something. But decided just, you know, that actually a worn look is more befitting anyway, because I've got a lot of wear on the body and the paint as it is. So I did not have an original set of these of knobs for this thing, but I think these look the part. I think they look really nice on here. Also, again, replaced all the electronics. It's had a complete setup, and these are really easy to set up if the bridge is in the right spot, and you don't have to move it. All you have to do really is loosen these screws a little bit, and your saddles slide back and forth. These 2 screws adjust the height and the pitch of the actual bridge itself. Again, I had to rewire one of these pickups. I'm not sure which one it was now, but I think it was the neck. This I had to make this piece, if you recall. That came out really nice. The way to make these parts, if you have to end up making something like this from a plastic blank, is to, especially if you don't have the original part, is to look at the outline of where the part used to be. You can lay a piece of clear plastic over the top of the area and kind of outline where the part used to be in like a black marker or something, and then you could take that and you know, overlay it over your, or cut it out and then overlay it over your new piece that you're going to be using, and then go from there. But I think it came out really well. That's exactly what the original part pretty much should have looked like, and I'm very happy with that. The neck pitch, again, we had to do a lot of work on the neck pitch with the chisel in here. I did not film that bit. If I had filmed it, it probably would have taken forever because that was a lot of work. Let's see, what else? Had to make the nut. We did see a bit of that in the film. And the bulk of the work was done on the headstock, where someone had tried fruitlessly to, I guess, take the old finish off. They kind of got like halfway and stopped, and of course we saw all that as well. We had some big chips when we got this thing, and I've kind of filled those into the best I could. The amber, it was strange because the amber finish, when I tried to match this, didn't really match very well. So what I ended up doing was just going with the darker stuff, so you couldn't, it'll hide it a little bit better, especially when all the tuners and everything were on here. I think it looks pretty good overall. This is a reproduction logo. Once again, I don't know why the people who own Teisco, the name now, won't reissue these logos, but apparently they're not doing that. Please, if you're watching this, whoever owns Teisco, reissue these logos so that we can restore these old things. That you know that they fell off, all the old ones, and you're only helping yourself by helping us. So please reissue these. Thank you very much. On the back of the guitar, of course, we saw where we had to make a neck plate, and you know, that was made out of a piece of brass shim stock. It's not perfect. Some of the holes I didn't get quite in line. You can see a little bit of a gap there on that hole. So it's, you know, it's not perfect, but it's, I mean, it's obviously not an original part anyway, because the thing's brass. Originally it would have been chrome. We're missing the original serial number plate here, which would have also had the model number, the EP200B. Very nice neck on this thing. Feels amazing, and good piece of Brazilian rosewood for the fretboard. I did some work on the back of the headstock as well that I didn't really document in this video series, but just so you know, I did come in here with some wood filler, some of the black wood filler that I've shown in some of my other videos, and filled these old screw holes so that they're, you know, more or less flush and kind of not as obvious. And then I sprayed a couple coats of clear over the back and sanded that as well, just to blend everything in a little bit, and to and also to get a little bit of lacquer over these holes and to blend them into the surrounding. And I think it came out okay. Again, I'm not trying to hide anything from anyone, but on something like this, I'm just trying to plug the holes, keep moisture from getting in there, and also just to improve the appearance somewhat. These are going to be really good tuners, I believe. I think they'll work just fine. They're kind of a shallower style, or Gota. I think Gota made these. I'm not sure, but yeah, they're going to do the trick. So overall, came out really nice. I'm very proud of the work that we were able to accomplish. And now let's give this thing a listen. All right, everybody. We're finally at a point again where we can check the space out, and everything works as it should. Let's see what she sounds like through a vintage 1990s custom KBA 15 amplifier. This is an awesome amp. You guys have got to get yourself one of these little custom KBA 15s. Can't remember where I got that. I think it must have been some kind of trash pile. When I got it, it didn't have any switch on it or anything, but I replaced the switch and did a little bit more work on it, and now it's my little test amp. So, good all-purpose amplifier, the KBA 15, I find. But anyway, let's check out this Teisco. And again, you guys already know I'm not a bass player, so take it with a grain of salt. We're going to start out with the bridge position. Oh, the thumb rest works brilliantly. I mean, it's awesome. Best thumb rest I've ever tried. Let's go in the middle position. So yeah, that's about a 19. I guess this is probably about a 1965 or 66 Teisco EP200B bass guitar. Thanks for sticking around for the duration of this long epic journey from the pile of pieces that I got, which was passing itself off for a bass guitar, and the actual bass guitar that we see in front of us now. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Hit the subscribe button somewhere down here below, and hope to see you in the future. Take care, y'all.